Hello and welcome everybody to STEM Careers in the Spotlight with Founder for Schools, which we're running to celebrate British Science Week, which this year is focusing on the theme of growth. Our guest speakers today are joining us, and they'll tell us a little bit about their career story and what it is they do. And then towards the end of the session, they'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. So my name is Alison. I will be hosting this session, and we hope that by learning a little bit more about some of the many varied careers that are out there, it will help you make some decisions about your future careers. And this session in particular, we're looking at careers in STEM with a focus on responsible growth, something which I think is very much something that everybody's taking a real serious look at, which can only be good for us in the planet. So, to the audience at home, please make sure your audio and video is turned off. You will be able to ask questions in the chat function, and we would love to hear anything that you want to know about. There will be some questions posted at the beginning and at the end of the session, some polls, so please do take time to answer those as well. And we are recording the session. It will be featured on our YouTube channel, so you can sit back and enjoy, make some notes if you want, but if not, you can come back and watch the recording and ask all your burning questions. So that takes us to our speakers today. So first of all, thank you very much for coming along. It's a pleasure to have you with us today, and thank you for agreeing to share your story. We're really looking forward to hear all about it. So we have two speakers. We have Sophie and we have Agnatika, and we're going to start with Sophie today. So Sophie, if you could maybe tell us a little bit about what it is you do and your company, and a little bit about how you got to where you are.
Absolutely. So hopefully I have started sharing my screen, but I don't. Yes, there we go. Brilliant. So I'm Sophie. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a rubbish startup called Disposal. And as CEO, I'm responsible for looking after my team and making sure that we know where we're going as a business, and building relationships with other organizations. And because we're a small team, I also do a lot of the sort of day-to-day tasks for the business, like finances and things like that. So you may have watched Blue Planet 2, or you might have seen images like this in the news. We have a major problem with waste, and especially with waste ending up where it shouldn't. It's really important that as our economies grow, that we do so in a sustainable way. And as so much of the stuff that we buy ends up in the world for longer after it's been put in the bin than while it's in use, it's particularly important that we ensure that it ends up where it should. And what we want to do is we want to try to help people to realise that the waste in our economies should actually be treated like resources and not like rubbish. So a lot of people think that when they think about putting something in the bin and what happens to it afterwards, they think it's a sort of fairly simple journey, something a bit like this. But actually, it looks more like this. It's a big, complicated mess, and actually maybe even more like this. So the red dots signify criminals in the kind of waste supply chain. So according to a recent European Commission report, 64% of the UK's hazardous waste, so the particularly nasty stuff, is lost from the kind of legitimate industry. And a recent study put the cost of waste crime in the UK alone at over £1 billion a year. So we really need to kind of keep the criminals out of the industry and to help the legitimate industry keep hold of our waste so that it can then be treated like the resources that it is. So we want it to look more like this. So we build software and we create data systems to stop criminals from getting their hands on it and to make sure it ends up being dealt with properly, and that we really understand what our waste is, because waste data is really bad. We don't have good data on waste in this country. And that means that less of it ends up recycled or reused. And so it has a bigger impact on the environment, and we want to improve that. And this is how I feel about my job most of the time. I absolutely love it. It isn't what I thought I would be doing when I was growing up. I wanted to be a marine biologist or a scuba diving instructor, but I have always been passionate about sustainability and the environment, and I really love the fact that I get to do a job where I get to make a difference in that and really try to make the world a better place. I've taken a very wiggly route getting here. So I did conflict resolution at university, but and in some ways I use that quite often in my job. It's good. It's all about talking to people well and negotiating and things like that. But I also use a lot of kind of the things I learned at school on a day-to-day basis as well, because like I said, because we're a small team, on day one I might be doing or even in a single day I might be doing the company accounts, and then I might be looking at data and thinking about how we can use that data to tell a story or to help people to make better decisions. I may be doing research into specific plastic types or specialist recycling processes. I might be writing reports. So there's a whole kind of range of things that I do on a day-to-day basis that kind of cover a huge amount of skills that I learned at school and afterwards. And kind of from a kind of gender perspective, so both the waste and the tech sector don't have good gender balance. But as an organisation, we were really keen to make sure that we kind of helped tip things in the right direction. So despite the fact we're tiny, we made the decision really early on that I would be the kind of company spokesperson. And I have to say, to start out with, I absolutely hated public speaking, but I've done a lot of it since then, and I've got used to it now, and I get to speak about waste and tech and data all over the place, like including abroad. So I got to go to India a few years ago to talk about this stuff. And even this week, this is my 4th talk this week. So yeah, I'd love to get to do what, this job. And I think it's really important to help anyone realize that if they're passionate about something, that they can make a difference and that they can work hard to kind of end up in a job where they get to do their passion and make a difference and connect with other people who really care about the same stuff. And that's what I hope to kind of be able to share with you today. So I think that's it from me.
Great, thank you. So if you had to boil that all down into one sentence, what problem do you think you help you solve in your company?
So we help people to make better decisions about their rubbish and recycling and resources. So we help people to make sure they're using licensed and legal people, and that they can help to make sure it ends up in the most environmentally sustainable way, so that it's more likely to be recycled or reused instead of ending up in landfill or incineration.
Great. And definitely fits very well into the theme of responsible growth. And what would you say to the young people who like STEM subjects but find it some parts difficult?
I'd say that all the best things in life are difficult. I think that as in, one of the things that I've really loved about this job is that it has allowed me to challenge myself in lots of different ways, and that by being willing to take on those challenges, I think that you can really grow as a person and you can learn loads of new skills, and it opens loads of new doors. So what I'd say is it's really worth persevering with those things that are challenging, because actually when you kind of break through those barriers and you kind of achieve those things, it makes such a difference, and it feels really rewarding. So I think it's about persevering and making the effort, because it's definitely worth it.
Thank you very much for that, Sophie. That was fantastic. And Tika, over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you started off, what you're doing now, and a bit about your company?
Well, I've got a really tough act to follow. I mean, Sophie was so incredibly inspiring, and just that energy and that passion and just what you're doing is so fantastic. So yeah, I guess if I go into what I do, so I'm Ayantika. I work for a small company called Stysix. So we are a manufacturer. So we're at the sort of engineering end. We make things. And I guess if I give you a quick what we do and why we do it, this little tube here that you can see on your screen, it weighs about as much as a packet of crisps. So it's really light. It's about 36 grams. But this will carry the weight of an African elephant or 2 Indian elephants. There is no other material in the world quite like it. And if this was steel, this would be much bigger and much heavier. So we develop really lightweight advanced materials. And actually, we're fortunate that we are one of the pioneers in the world that develop this and make this. So it's really exciting sort of hardware. I never thought whilst I was at school that this is something I would be doing. And again, just as Sophie said, sort of what you study or what you think you might want to do when you're young actually can be very different to what you work when you're older. But I think what you also enjoy doing, sort of, for me, I don't see work as work. It's I really love what we do here. So it just, I'm just, I guess, lucky to be getting paid to do what I do. So I guess for me, in my job, what I actually do, so I'm a director of business strategy at my within the business, but that's looking at it from a couple of angles. So a large part of what I do is digitizing our manufacturing process, because we are developing this new advanced materials that hasn't been sort of done before. We've got to look at how can we make sure that every single part is consistent, and so every part that goes into an aircraft in the future is the same as the last part that got made. So, and we really use sort of digital technology and programming and algorithms to make sure that we can track the manufacturing process. And for us, this is important because we would use this technology to, say, make aircraft lighter. So one of the big challenges with lots of different industries, whether it's cars, whether it's planes, we've got to make sure that they are net zero or they're zero emission, because we all have to reduce the amount of carbon we're burning and the amount of CO2 emissions that transport sectors like transport generate. So what we're doing is developing ultra lightweight components that will go on aircraft, which means that if we use this technology on just landing here on aircraft, we could save 3.7 million tons of CO2. So quite a significant amount of carbon dioxide emissions saved. And that's really what drives us, is how can we make current systems more efficient? And for us, and hence with sustainable growth, is how can we, as engineers, sort of make sure that future systems are much more efficient? So I guess one of the things that really surprised me, sort of as I started my career, was actually understanding or realizing how much I use maths and STEM sort of subjects in absolutely everything that I do. And I think the other day I sort of realized that actually I probably use 80 to 90% of my GCSE maths and A-level maths. It sort of creeps up on you in really bizarre ways. I think a while back I had to figure out the length of an arc. Now, when I studied how to calculate the length of an arc, I never thought I would actually need to use geometry in that way. But you'll end up using maths and science in ways that you never imagined. While you're learning it, you think, this I'm not going to need this again, really. but you will end up using it. So I'm almost so grateful to my younger self for having spent that time to sort of learn maths and learn science properly, so that now I'm fortunate to have this really strong foundation which you can sort of build on. And I guess one of the other things that I'd say is, growing up, I wasn't necessarily the best math student or the best science student. I think I always knew that some of my peers in school just got it more easily than me. And I knew that I always had to work a lot harder. So, but I would say that don't be discouraged if that's the case, because it's okay. And for me, I stuck at it, I think, more than anything else. And what I found was, say, with maths, the more I practiced it, the more I sort of, it's almost like a language. The more you use it, the more fluent you become. So I found that whilst maybe I wasn't as good at it as everyone else, but if I stuck at it, actually I enjoyed it a lot more. So that's one of the things I would say to anyone, that if you think, oh, but it's not for me, I'm not good at it. Oh, but boys are so much better. It's like, no, anyone can do it. And I think that's one of the things that we're starting to see so much more of, is more women in engineering, in technology, as in sort of Sophie's field as well. So I think that's really great to see.
Fantastic. And that's a nice message about perseverance and just giving something a go. Excellent. So what would you say to, let me phrase that. How would you boil down what problem it is you solve into one sentence.
We make different modes of transport, whether it's planes or electric vehicles, lighter, more fuel efficient, and burn less emissions. Emit less emissions.
Fantastic. And that was a very succinct sentence. So well done. Excellent. Fantastic. Right, well, thank you very much for that. I do have a lot of questions for both of you, but at this point, if anybody in the audience has any questions, please do just pop them in the chat box. And please also take part in the Slido that's just been popped into your chat boxes as well. We'd love to hear your thoughts on things. So this is open to both of you. Maybe I don't know if maybe you want to start first, Sophie, but what is it you most enjoy about your career?
I think the thing, I've been reflecting on this a lot recently, actually, and I think the thing that I enjoy the most is the variety. I think I really love the fact that every day is different. And I think, I mean, this is a cheat answer because I'm going to say two different things. So, and then the other thing I love about it is using that variety to solve a whole range of different problems. So I love getting to work on these really big, complicated problems, like how do we turn waste into a resource, or how do we tackle waste crime, or how do we get more plastic packaging to be recycled, or, you know, all of these sorts of things are big, complicated problems with lots of people involved in it. And I love getting to work on these and collaborate with loads of different people and find solutions that you can kind of come together and, you know, work together to solve these things. So I think they're my two favorite things about it.
I'll allow you the two favorite things. That's absolutely fine. What about you, Antika?
I guess for me, my favorite thing is that we get to make things, and I guess it's something that I didn't realize till a lot later on. So even whilst I was at university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I tried, for example, you know, a career in sort of banking. I tried management consulting, you know, so finance, a whole range of different things. And actually, I ended up sort of starting a small business, starting a company to make things. So I guess I finally found, after looking at and trying lots of different things, I finally found the one thing that I'm really passionate about, which is making things.
That actually is very nicely into a question that we have from the audience. And was there anything specific that inspired you to go into your field?
I guess if I have a quick stab at it, when I was at university, it was the first time when Tesla and SpaceX were starting to people were starting to talk about manufacturing as this cool thing to do, rather than, you know, a bunch of, you know, blokes hanging around in a shed making things. And I thought, you know, it's really great because they're using technology, they're using, you know, lots of advances, and just changing the way they make things, just having a completely fresh approach to it. So for me, I found that really inspiring. And growing up sort of seeing NASA send space shuttles, you know, I just really love that sort of tech.
What about you, Sophie?
So as I said, I mean, from a really young age, I've been really, really bothered about the environment. I found a workbook from when I was 10 a few weeks ago, and I was reading it, and I was talking about recycling and rubbish, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. But I think, so what for us, my background is completely random and varied. Mostly I've been working in food supply chains before I did this, and in 2015, my partner and I quit our jobs and we went cycle touring in North America for 9 months. And while we were pedaling around and I was having a lovely time pedaling, Tom was thinking about the problems he'd had in his previous job in waste management, and he kind of came up with the initial idea for disposal. And I thought it was a really brilliant idea, and I wanted to support it. And even though I had no knowledge about how to run a business or start a business, I was just I was so taken with the idea, and I basically just did loads of research and just jumped in with both feet. And I'm so pleased because, like I said, it allows me to kind of do things that have been things I've been passionate about for such a long time, and really try to make a difference. And waste is so often overlooked, so it's a great area to kind of be in and to make a difference in.
Excellent. And do you have any, and this is a question from the audience, by the way, do you have any advice for someone who likes STEM subjects but maybe lacks the confidence that they think they need to pursue them? And that can be for either of you.
I don't mind kind of having a bit of a stab at that. So, I mean, I think my advice would be that I think like both I and Tika and I've said that our career paths have not taken necessarily the route we thought they would. And so if you know, if you're passionate about it and you like it, I would say pursue it because you like it. And actually, you know, if you put effort into these things, I think they can take you in places you don't necessarily expect to go. And also if it turns out down the road that maybe you take a different route when you kind of come out of school and you go down a different route, and that's okay, and maybe then you come back again, and that's fine too. As in, we put so much pressure to kind of make these decisions early on, and I think what I would like to say is that you don't know where life's going to take you, and actually if you're willing to make an effort and try things and be brave, that will take you a long way. And so if you like them, I would say absolutely stick with it and give it a try and see where it takes you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sophie answered it just perfectly there. That do something ultimately because you enjoy doing it, because you love it, because it interests you, rather than whether people, I guess, other people's opinion of it and whether you're good at it or not. Because if you really enjoy doing something, you will make it work. And if it doesn't, that's also okay. I know when I sort of my first job was starting a business. It didn't work out, but that's actually okay. And it's one of the things where we again, as Sophie said, we put so much pressure on ourselves to say, oh no, we have to absolutely get this right. And actually, things will change. And usually, if for me, I know that, with my previous experience and the fact that it didn't work, it actually taught me so much. And it's entirely the reason I'm doing what I'm doing today. And I'm absolutely, over the moon with what I'm doing. So yeah, it's follow what really interests you. And I think the rest will just take care of itself. And also just to add to that, I absolutely really didn't like writing essays. So I picked maths, further maths, physics, and chemistry for my A levels. So I picked all of the subjects, which meant I would never have to write another essay ever again. And it turns out that now, as part of my job, I have to write a lot. So you'll end up doing things that you thought, oh, I'm never going to touch that. I'm never going to do that. But it's just how things work.
Well, that is actually a very interesting point, that sometimes the skills that you think you might need in your future, turns out that's not quite the case. But when you think of the jobs that are taking place in your company, what sort of skills are the most useful?
Want me to go first? I think so. When we look to recruit people, actually the kind of the single biggest thing that we look for is kind of is curiosity and a kind of and care, like as in that people who care about what they do. And actually the kind of the qualifications and the previous experience are less important to us than that sort of desire to learn and kind of engage in things. So that's the sort of primary thing that we look for. But having said that, we do have technical roles in our company. So we have 3 developers in our company, and Tom, my co-founder, looks after our data side of things. So I'm not technical. I'm not a technical person in the kind of strict sense of the word, but that doesn't in any way stop me from running a tech company. And I'm, and I think that's the other thing I'd say, is that you can end up in these kind of sectors and industries where you are in a technical industry, but you aren't necessarily doing a technical role. And that's also totally cool and very interesting. And you get to interact with all these people who do amazing things and things that you can't understand. And then my job is to try and take those complicated things and explain it to people in ways that maybe make a bit more sense to people who don't get all that technical stuff. So I think we've got a range of jobs, but I think we want people that come from all different backgrounds, because again, these are big complicated problems, and actually the only way we're going to solve them is by getting lots of different people together in a room and all bringing our brains and experience and kind of understanding to try and solve them. And if we try and get all people who think the same, we're not going to do that. So yeah.
No, I definitely echo what Sophie said. The one thing we look for is just that enthusiasm, that they want to do something and they want to learn as well. So I think that's really what we look for. But and also, sort of, given it's British Science Week, I would say we have a very strong preference for people who have that genuine interest in science, because that's, whilst it's engineering, science is fundamentally what we do. So we need to see that sort of enthusiasm. And I think if someone having done science projects or whatever it is, if you can talk about things you've done that are just beyond just what you're learning in the curriculum, that's really great. I think it shows an employer that you're interested, and you've got to just think of, just doing some extracurricular activities, whether it's, science, maths, sort of IT related. And I think they really help because employers see that as, yeah, you're interested, you've done something more than, you were expected to do.
That's probably a good bit of advice across the board, not necessarily just for STEM jobs. Okay. We're very keen on role models in our organisation. We think it's very important that you find someone, doesn't have to be someone you know personally, that you can look to and think that's the sort of person I want to be, or that's the kind of job I want to do, or the role that I want to take part in. So I just wondered, do either of you have any role models? And it's okay if you don't, but if you do, it'd be lovely to hear about it.
Well, if I quickly go first, Sophie, if you don't mind, I would say my first role model is my mum. She's a geography teacher, but she's absolutely fantastic and has so much drive. So she absolutely has always throughout my life been my role model. But I guess whilst I didn't have anyone sort of growing up in STEM that I could see, I want to be like them. I think sort of as I've grown through my career, what I've seen is there's so many women sort of running large organizations. So there's sort of Gwynne Shotwell, who sort of runs SpaceX. And I find that really inspiring that, there are women running these really large, complex organizations that are doing some really cool things. So for me, I find that really inspiring.
How about you, Sophie?
Yeah, I mean, also, I'm incredibly lucky that I have loads of amazing women in my family and friend circle who have kind of taught me that's no barrier to anything, to what you want to achieve and what you can do. And and I feel really, really blessed to come from a family like that. And then along the journey, I've encountered so many women, like from afar, but also personally, who I've just been blown away with the kinds of work they do, how they conduct themselves, the type of people they are, and how they bring people together, and how they achieve incredible things. And I just I honestly, I'm constantly, I couldn't choose one because there's absolutely tons of them. I feel so lucky to kind of have that network, and I was incredibly lucky last year to be one of the Women in Innovation winners. So I was one of Innovate UK's Women in Innovation cohort for last year. So there's like 40 of us who, I mean, and again, just the women in that group are astounding and amazing, doing all sorts of different things in totally remarkable and brilliant ways. So yeah, absolutely blessed with lots and lots of role models.
Well, that's very good to hear, because we truly do believe that helps make you a little bit more successful. Great, so we're almost at the end of the session, so if anybody has one final question, please do pop it in the chat box. But then I will ask one final question. If you were to give a little bit of advice to your younger self when they were thinking about what they were going to be doing for their future career, what would it be? And we'll start with you, Anya, take care.
I would say definitely, and I guess I sort of mentioned earlier, treat your subjects, what you're learning in school, as a toolbox that gives you it just opens up your future. So if you invest the time now to actually study and sort of in different subjects, not just STEM, it builds such a strong foundation that then you can go out, and when you figure out what you want to do and what interests you, you can use all of that skills. So I'd say it's so important. And I guess I was a bit of a bookworm growing up, and I'm really grateful to my younger self for having done that, for having studied hard, because yeah, I think that's such a large part of why I am where I am.
Good. Thank you. Sophie?
That is excellent advice. And I think so, to add to that, I would say like, don't worry about it and be brave, like, as in, be bold and follow the things that you find fascinating, and stay curious, and and kind of interested in the world, and that will serve you very well without having to plan everything out and be really meticulous in where you're going to end up. So yeah, study hard, but don't stress out too much, and trust that if you're engaged and enthusiastic, it will take you lots of places.
Fantastic. That's some lovely bits of advice to finish on there. I want to thank you so much for coming along and sharing your stories with us today. We're both really insightful, and I hope the young people listening got a lot out of it. I know I did. For everybody else, we will be sending out feedback forms. It would be great if you could give us some information back about how you found sessions. They really do help us plan future ones. We will be putting the recording on our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on socials at Founders for Schools or at F4S Digital. And we will be having more events coming up, but this is the last session today to celebrate British Science Week. We are doing a session tomorrow on physics. Hope to see you then. But thank you very much for coming along, and have a lovely day.